Getting into beekeeping can be a bit daunting, but where do you even begin? Having a pet is one thing, but having a box full of bees, 10 to 60,000 of them in your garden, is quite another. When I got my first beehive for Christmas, I was filled with excitement, but also became overwhelmed and anxious because I didn't even know where to start. This was something I've always wanted to do, but in reality, I had no idea. There's cat's brood there, dark cat brood. There's honey stores. No, it's all very dark. There's pollen. Yeah, pollen and honey. Go. So I read through some books. I highly recommend this one, and searched how to start a beehive on YouTube, and slowly I became more knowledgeable. In the learning process, I also joined my local bee association, which allowed me to connect to other beekeepers in my district. This then allowed me to find where I could purchase my first nuke of bees. A nuke, by the way, is a miniature, fully functional bee colony, which typically has 5 frames. They are used as a starter hive for beginners such as myself, a method for splitting hives, or a tool for rearing your queen. So spring had finally arrived, and my local bee dealer contacted me. It was time to pick up my box of bees, and so my journey began. After a 1-hour drive, I brought my box of bees to where I have placed my hive. So I asked my bee dealer, what should I do when I get them back home? And he said, just take them out of the nuke and put them in the centre of your brood box in the exact same position they are in your nuke. You can purchase several different types of hives. So the hive I've got is called a Langstroth, and being so eager to start beekeeping, I purchased a national nuke because the bee dealer closest to me didn't have any Langstroth nukes left, and I really wanted to get started this spring. The issue I have now is that the frames inside the hive are slightly different to the frames inside the nuke, so I'm unable to just transfer the nuke frames into my hive. So I purchased these frame extenders that you just screw onto the handles onto your frames. So I took the frames out one by one of the transport box, screwed on the plastic frame extenders and placed the frames into the hive. And I left the bees for a week, and I hoped and I prayed the bees would still be there when I see them next week. So my second week of being a beekeeper came when I received a phone call late evening asking to collect a swarm of bees off a fence that had been there since dinner time. And being eager and a little more confident since I now own a colony, I just had to. Unfortunately, my camera wasn't charged, so I was unable to capture me collecting them and placing them into my nuke. But I managed to collect them all by scooping them up in a dustpan and placing them into my empty nuke. I sealed them up for the night, and when morning came, I took them and a hive I bought second hand from another member from my bee association to my apiary, set them all up into their new home, fed them some sugar syrup, and left them for 24 hours. So upon arrival, I was so pleased to see my bees in both the hives. They were still there and just getting on with it. I was really surprised by how calm the bees were. In my head, I was thinking these bees are going to be mad, they're going to go crazy and sting me, but no, they weren't. They were just super calm. This was a lot less stressful than I first thought it would be. They got to work building comb out on their new frames, and they seemed happy with their little hive. Upon my first proper inspection, I managed to spot my queen in both the breeder hive and the new caught wild bee hive. Also, if anyone knows what type of honeybees my swarm bees are, please let me know, as I'm unsure and I don't know how to identify their breed. I was so glad to catch baby bees being born. Eggs was being laid, larvae, pupa. I was very happy with this hive. But then I saw something that shouldn't be there. A little tiny caterpillar coming out of one of my cells. After studying honeybee books for months, I knew that this was a wax moth larvae, and I knew there was nothing I could do in May. It was the wrong time of year. So all I could do was remove it and hope that if there was any more larva moth there, the bees would deal with it. I was pretty confident though, as 6 out of 8 of my frames were full. Upon checking my new wild second hive, I transferred a frame from my first hive, which had honey, pollen, eggs, larvae, so they had some supplies, as they were starting off with nothing. It was also nice to see how quickly they started to draw out comb. I checked they had enough sugar syrup and closed them up for another week. It's been 3 weeks since I became a beekeeper, and I'm really looking forward to see how the bees are doing. The wild-caught national hive was doing wonderfully. It's only been a week and they've already drawn out 8 out of 12 frames of honeycomb, and I could see some eggs being laid. I didn't spot the queen, but knowing there was eggs laid, I knew she was probably just keeping a low profile. I also purchased these wax moth repellent sticks. I'm hoping they work. They seem to have some good reviews. They don't harm the bees in any way, but if I can assist them in getting rid of the wax moth, there is no harm in trying. I kept the sugar feeder on for them just to make sure they still had enough stores. Unfortunately, this week didn't go as I hoped. I knew that putting national frames into a Langstroth hive wasn't going to be a good plan. But I just had to roll with what I had at the time, and my eagerness had finally come round to bite me, or sting, should I say. In the space of a week, the bees had built up a brace comb. It was a sad sight seeing drawn out comb filled with eggs, pollen and fresh stores all down the side of the frames attached to the brood box, and I had to destroy it. Hindsight is a brilliant thing. So in this case, I decided not to cause any more damage to the colony today, to go home, prepare some Langstroth brood frames and grab some elastic bands. After a sleepless night, worrying about the havoc I'm going to cause, the time had come to take action. With a very brave volunteer, we removed the frames one at a time from the Langstroth, brushed all the bees back into the brood box, then cut through the honeycomb that was attached to the inner frame and placed the honeycomb onto the new Langstroth frames with lacquer bands that we prepared earlier. Once we completed all 4 frames, we closed up the hive, removed any comb that we cut away, and hope and pray next week the bees have attached the comb onto the new frames and they are happy with what we have done. This week I'm mainly focusing on finding the queens. My Langstroth Buckfast queen has a mark, but last time I checked it was just a tiny smudge. Also, my National Wild Hive queen hasn't been marked yet. I'm doing this because hopefully this will really help me spot them easily in the future. When you have a frame of bees, they all start to look the same. So last week we took some drastic action and cut the comb out of 4 frames in the Langstroth, and today, just look at a beautiful job they've done. I am so glad that this has worked. This past month has been quite an adventure, full of intense fascination, learning curves and a bit of anxiety. But if there's one thing I've realised, it's that beekeeping is more than just a hobby. It's a new lifestyle that demands patience, a keen eye and the courage to embrace the wilderness of the bees. And I am so glad I have chosen to embrace this role.